The Hunt was a film that was supposed to come out in September of 2019. But then it was pulled for a few reasons. There had been a mass shooting in Dayton and El Paso. And then there was some controversy that came about with President Trump. So this film got pushed back. And it was mainly pushed back because what the trailer revealed was that this was going to be a story that sort of takes place, at least the trailer seemed to make it seem that it took place in a dystopian, not too distant future where conservatives, or as the film, notes them as deplorables, basically the heavy on the right side of politics, were hunted for sport. Akin to, you've seen this type of formula before in stuff like The Most Dangerous Game, stuff like Battle Royale, and several other films of that nature. Running Man. Now, I found this weird when this happened because a lot of conservatives were kind of pushing back on this film, but I don't know how many conservatives have actually looked at those kind of dystopian hunted for sport type films, but usually the people who are hunted are not meant to be the antagonists. They're usually the heroes. So it's kind of strange. It's like this could have been the film for them, and yet it got pushed back. And so it got pushed back to March, and the studio is laid in thick on this controversy. Like, if you look up the poster is just all the negative criticisms about the film before it has even come out from people who have not seen the film. So the poster is laying into that controversy thick by saying, decide for yourself, go see the film, and find out what it's all about and what all the controversy is. Because why wouldn't you? If your film's that controversial, it's got a lot of buzz, you go for it. And the thing is, I was kind of expecting the film to kind of be that. It just sort of be like, a right-leaning Most Dangerous Game, where the liberal elites are the ones who are out to kill all the conservatives, and the conservatives are the ones who fight back. And to a degree, that's kind of what the film is, but also kind of not. This is a film that, like, the best way I can describe it is that it's kind of like sloppy satire. Because you can tell, like, the film is trying to be incendiary of a couple of different aspects of society. You can tell that it's trying to make some commentary on cancel culture, and political correctness, and stuffy liberals, obviously. But the way that it's framed and the way that it goes about its gore and it's humor is just sort of all over the place, that a lot of times even the film gets kind of lost about what it's trying to say in all this. Like, it's weird because, like, it seems like this film, because of those, the way it sets up the political divide here, that it would kind of lean more into politics, but it doesn't. It just kind of uses them as as buzzwords. It kind of feels like this whole film was just cobbled together from like a series of Reddit posts, because it brings up so many political topics and just uses them as literal punchlines for dialogue here. So if you're really hoping for some deeper exploration of how, like, some aspects of, of like the left and, and like cancel culture and PC culture are dissected a little bit more, you won't get that here. You'll just kind of get like a wink and a nod from, like, from the filmmaker saying, hey, look, I went online once. I read some incendiary tweets and went on Reddit a few times. Now, I kind of like the setup for the story because it takes place in basically modern times. Like, it's not set as like a dystopian future where hunting, the deplorables is like a sport or a pastime. It's clear that this is illegal. But a collective of the wealthy have basically decided that they want to hunt a few of them. So they kidnap them, they bring them out to a field, they give them some guns to defend themselves, and they basically just go on the hunt. I do gotta admit, though, I do kind of dig how the film first starts off, because first, like, we're introduced to all the survivors, and immediately I think the film kind of like subverts your expectations here in a way that I kind of dig, which is that you think, okay, so we're gonna follow these 2 or 3 characters based on that we know them. Nope, those 2 or 3 characters get picked off right away. And they think, okay, so maybe it'll like shift here. Maybe we'll get different stories. So maybe these three characters will be the ones that we follow because we're spending a lot more time with them. We know a little bit more about them. We reveal a bit more of their character. Nope, they're gone. They're gone too. And so eventually, once the film finally settles down, was like, thought it was going to be this film. It eventually settles on our hero being Crystal, one of the hunted, played by Betty Gilpin. And I gotta admit, like, Betty Gilpin, I will say this, she can make a great action star. There's a lot of scenes where she gets to do a lot of running and gunning, where she gets to get very physical, very violent. She stabs people, she punches people, she tries to outsmart them, and you can, she has that look of a very, like, thinking action hero who's always considerate about, what's in front of her and what's happening. The problem with that is, though, she has served up a script here that does not do her justice. Like, for instance, in one of her most revealing moments, we learn that she's aware enough on cigarette prices where she knows not to trust certain strangers, that they are in on this game as well. Interesting moment, but her kind of action one-liner for that scene is kind of cringy. Like it seems like she's really trying to force it through so hard to make it like, to make it an action one-liner that it just comes off not even really like goofy, just kind of like, I don't want to say cringy, but it's just like, I get that this line's supposed to be funny and it's not quite working. And there are a lot of moments like this throughout the entire film. I will say this, that first act does a good job about setting up your expectations for the rest of this film. Because, yeah, most of that first act subverts your expectations about who you're going to follow in the story. And that subversion will just keep going throughout. Like, it just keeps getting twistier and twistier and twistier about questioning where they are, who they can trust, like, who's faking it, who's actually trying to hunt them, who's actually legitimate. Interesting setup, at least, but the way that it flows and the ultimate resolve about why they are being targeted is very clumsy when you think about its assembly here. Because, like, the people who have, like, kidnapped these deplorables to hunt them down, it's not just in a random field. No. They've gone all out. They've not only set up a field, but they set up spike traps, they set up mines, they've set up barbed wire, they've set up fake rest stops, and fake immigrants, and fake government agents to, like, this is, like, way too elaborate for just, like, let's go hunt some people out in the woods. And I know that, based on that assembly, it would seem like that'd be funny because, it just keeps getting twistier and crazier. But the thing is, it just seems like a lazy excuse to just play, like, the most dangerous game. Because, like I said, it definitely has a political bent here, but it fluctuates all over the place. Like, there are several moments when this film doesn't really want to know which way it's leaning, whether it wants us, to side with the conservatives who are being hunted by the elites, or we're supposed to side with the elites because the conservatives they hunt are constantly talking about how, they're being targeted by cucks and the Jews, and how if they get out of this, they're going to end up on, they're going to have like a heroic story they can tell on Hannity. So there are several points when you're watching this film, and I'm kind of questioning, is this kind of like a Starship Troopers type deal where it's supposed to be a satire of how, like, conservatives would actually make a battle royale or their own version of the most dangerous game? Because it definitely seems that way, because a lot of this dialogue is just ridiculous. And I don't mean in kind of like a campy way. It's like, they're clearly trying to make jokes about cancel culture and cultural appropriation and climate change, from like the stuffy, like, liberals who like to pretend they're making a difference in the world, but they just really talk about it and don't really do anything about it. And I only say that because the film never makes that too clear. It alludes to it at several points, but it never really takes a stance on anything. It just kind of, that's the biggest problem. This film just kind of, like, wavers all over the place. In particular, there's a scene where Crystal is talking with one of the other deplorables that she's trying to survive with. And she ends up telling a story about the tortoise and the hare, but then changes the story up by saying, but then in this story, the hare comes home and basically kills the turtle and his whole family, and makes the turtle watch as the jackrabbit. Well, she calls it, it's the jackrabbit and the turtle, I think it's called. So yeah, like the jackrabbit comes home and kills the turtle and his whole family, and the person next to her is basically asking, okay, so are we the jackrabbit or the turtle? And Crystal's kind of like, she just kind of gives us kind of like weird, like, I don't know, but it's a messed up image, isn't it? And that's pretty much, that kind of defines this entire film. It's just kind of like, hey, wouldn't it be something if like if the stuffy liberal elites were hunting down the deplorable conservatives, and then basically someone would stand next to them and say, well, wait a minute, okay, so is it supposed to be, you know, a film for conservatives because it shows, like, you know, how vicious and stuffy and villainous the left can be? Or is it supposed to be satirizing the right because it's showing this ridiculous vision of how, like, the elites are out to hunt them for literal sport, that they need to, like, own guns to fire back at them? And the film just kind of shrugs and goes, I don't know. But hey, I hear all these political buzzwords you've heard before. We can just slather them on top of the most dangerous game here. I will say this, to the film's credit, the action scenes are pretty good here. There's a great climax when they revealed that at the end of the film, this whole thing was being orchestrated by a character played by Hilary Swank. And they meet in her rich manor, and they have a knockdown, drag-out fight with kitchen knives and slamming through glass and a few guns firing and, like, blades that they can find all over the house, and carries out into the backyard. It carries back into the house. There's a few mildly funny lines in between there. Like, at one point, they get slammed through so much glass, at one point they say, okay, no more glass. Open the door. Just, we'll come in here. We'll continue the fight. It's like, I gotta admit, okay, that scene's pretty good. But then you realize that, you know, okay, once that scene ends, it's going to go back to sort of like its haphazard political commentary that ultimately says nothing. Like this is a film that just wants to just kind of bask in the weirdness of how, like, politics fluctuate and divide us, but never quite make it clear that we're never really supposed to side with either side. Like I said, I'm trying to dissect this as best I can because I'm not too sure if this is supposed to be conservative satire, like akin to, like, Starship Troopers. It seems like it is, just because it's played up so ridiculous and campily, and characters in this film don't really talk like human beings would. They talk like they do on Twitter, which, I'm sorry, people in real life do not speak like this. Maybe in their minds, you know, for someone who is locked in their house the whole time, I can imagine someone writing a script like this. That's why I say I wouldn't be surprised if this script was just composed of, like, you know, Reddit and Twitter posts, because it speaks almost exactly like that. And it's really a shame because of that, it just kind of has this aimless quality to it, which makes it all the more infuriating because, like, Betty Gilpin deserves a much better film than this. She is a great action star in this film, and she's just handed this sloppy, messy, aimless script that does nothing for her. Like, the best parts of this film are honestly when she's kicking ass, and she does a great job doing it while still getting a smirk in between here and there. She has this kind of great look of crazy to her, but kind of like an understandable crazy if you were being hunted in the woods. But she's just trapped in this film that, just like I said, it just smears, you know, political rhetoric, it just smears political rhetoric all over the place and doesn't know what to do with any of it. It smears metaphors and allegories all over the place and has no idea what it's talking about half the time. And maybe that's also a commentary on how much, you know, these highly politically engaged people tend to think they know what they're talking about, but not really. But like I said, these are aspects that you're going to have to, like, pull through this with a fine-tooth comb, and I get the feeling most audiences are not probably going to grasp it that much, which is strange. Like, I get the feeling that this film is trying to be provocative, like it's just trying to piss off both the left and the right, but in kind of like that weird kind of, like, you know, online troll sort of way, where they're trying to piss off both sides of the audience, but not in really, like, a clever way, just kind of just using insults and buzzwords and slurs all over the place. And it it just comes off so empty. Like it ultimately doesn't really say anything in the end. Like, you know, it's political, but it's also really apolitical at the same time. And as a result, the film is just it just says nothing other than look at this cool gore we have. There is some cool gore here and there. There's guts that get splattered and people that get decapitated and impaled and stabbed, and it's pretty gruesome. I give it points for gore and points for action, but its writing is just so damn sloppy, and I cannot get it out of my head, especially because even when I appreciated a lot of these great action sequences, I just knew that once it ends, once Betty's like amazing showcase of talent here ends, it's gonna go back to just pointless and mindless dialogue here that ultimately says nothing. So The Hunt, I don't blame them for leaning into this controversy, because this film has nothing much to offer outside of just like the visual and the violent. That's about it. So The Hunt, 1.5 out of 5 stars.